Shocking moment, Karoline Leavitt and husband take down Jimmy Kimmel, you are offending. Los Angeles, awards night, glitter, cameras. The same jokes are repackaged with different names. But then Karoline Leavitt walked in, and she didn't walk in alone. She wore power like a second skin, a deep emerald gown that caught the light like armor, a silver cross glinting at her throat. But what turned heads wasn't the look. It was the man beside her. Daniel Whitmore, former Marine, quiet presence. Broad-shouldered, clean-cut, and exuding the kind of tension you get from someone who's used to scanning exits. Is that her bodyguard, no husband? I think he's a vet. The murmurs spread like perfume in a velvet room. Karoline caught every glance. She didn't flinch, didn't smile either. She wasn't there for charm. They were halfway to their table when a voice smooth as varnish but edged like a box cutter cracked over the speaker. Ladies and gentlemen, tonight we have stars, senators, influencers, and someone who thinks being married to a Marine makes you bulletproof on Twitter. The spotlight found its host, Jimmy Kimmel, host of Jimmy Kimmel, live veteran of late-night snark dressed in black on black with a grin made of smirk and ego. Look who just arrived, Karoline Leavitt, the human version of a Fox News headline, and her husband. Well, I thought he was here to stop her from tweeting. But no, he's just the silent type. Silent and intensely judgmental. Polite laughter, nervous titters. Karoline's jaw didn't move, but Daniel's did. A flicker, a lock. The kind of tension that makes a room feel 10 degrees cooler. They sat, no words between them, just the silence of calculation. You okay? Daniel asked low and calm. I'm fine, she replied, but he's not. Jimmy Kimmel was in his element, bouncing from political zingers to celebrity jabs. Then he went back in. Honestly, when I saw them walk in, I thought we had a crossover episode, Marine meets MAGA Barbie, and I mean that affectionately. She's got backbone, just none of the policies. Laughter, this time louder. Karoline's hand gently tightened on the napkin in her lap. She didn't rise. Not yet. Jimmy glanced toward her table, satisfied, until his gaze met Daniel's. What he saw made the smile falter. A beat too long. A blink too slow. 2 minutes later, the room dimmed. Another spotlight flared from stage left. Whispers rose like static. Karoline Leavitt was walking to the stage. Alone. Calm. Not scheduled. Not cued. But unstoppable. Jimmy turned, clearly confused. Karoline. What are you doing? She didn't look at him. She looked at the room. Since Jimmy brought me into the monologue, I figured I'd offer a response. Nervous chuckles, shifting chairs. A cameraman quietly adjusted his angle. It's easy to make fun of people who don't work in your world. But Jimmy didn't just mock me, he mocked my husband. A man who served this country for 10 years. A man who doesn't need a stage to have presence. She turned slightly toward Jimmy, her tone steady, her gaze level. And by the way, if you're going to compare him to Jason Bourne, at least try to be accurate. Jason would have lost that fight. In a second. That broke the silence. Veterans near the back stood up and clapped. Someone whistled. Another yelled, "Say it again." Karoline didn't move. When I came in tonight, I knew I wasn't your kind of guest. I come from service, from faith, from people who believe that respect isn't a punchline. Jimmy's face had drained of color. He chuckled, weakly. But Karoline wasn't done. You talk every night like the mic makes you invincible. But let me tell you something, it doesn't. Truth doesn't need punchlines. It takes courage. And courage is something I see every morning when I look across the kitchen table. Then she stepped back, returned to her table. The crowd didn't laugh. They watched. Jimmy adjusted his tie, forced a smile. Wow. Okay, guess I got a lecture from the Secretary of Snarky Comebacks. A few polite laughs, mostly tension. I mean, if I had $1 for every conservative who claimed I offended them, I'd be as rich as, me. The laugh didn't land. Look, I respect the troops. But let's not pretend that being married to one makes you qualified to speak for leadership. There's a difference between experience and ego. Ooh. Even his table winced. Backstage, Daniel stood in silence, watching on a monitor. You want me to go? He asked. Karoline didn't reply. She just stepped aside. The doors creaked open. Daniel Whitmore entered the ballroom. Slow, calm, tall. The audience turned like a wave shifting under a silent moon. He walked to the stage, took the mic without asking. You can joke all you want, Jimmy, but the moment you questioned her leadership, you made it personal. She earned her voice. You just act like you deserve yours. The front row gasped. Jimmy blinked, mouth slightly open. Not a word. Daniel returned the mic, walked out, didn't look back, and the room, it cracked. By the time the show was cut to commercial, Twitter had exploded clips, subtitles, loops, remix edits, hashtags. Dr. Daniel did that. Your mic drop, Marine. Your sit down, Jimmy. Respect earned, not given. Fox News had a chyron ready before the crowd left the ballroom. Karoline Leavitt's husband stuns Hollywood with a 10-word takedown, and for once even CNN hesitated to spin it. Karoline hadn't shouted, Daniel hadn't raged, but the truth. It landed like a hammer. Backstage, Jimmy Kimmel was pacing like a trapped executive in a burning PR meeting. His earpiece buzzed. Let it go, Jimmy. Just move on with the script, a producer whispered. He didn't respond, didn't blink. He had just been upstaged by a woman who wasn't even scheduled to speak and by a man who didn't raise his voice, didn't lean on fame, didn't even touch the camera. And now the cameras were rolling. The internet was watching, and he was bleeding cool points in real time. Karoline and Daniel had returned to their seats, calm, measured, unbothered. She sipped water. He adjusted his cuff. Neither looked at the stage. Jimmy straightened his jacket and stepped back out. Well, he said, attempting lightness. That went differently than planned. Light chuckles, no momentum. I guess I just got a masterclass in media relations from the First Lady of Fox. Awkward laughter, even fewer claps. But hey, if I had $1 for every conservative who got their feelings hurt, I'd finally beat Bezos on the billionaire leaderboard. Someone in the front row coughed. Jimmy doubled down. I respect the troops. I do. But let's not confuse being married to one with knowing anything about national leadership. There's a big difference between actual experience and political cosplay. His words lingered. Even his own side shuffled. Even his own smile betrayed him. Daniel hadn't moved. He just turned to Karoline. You good with me walking back in there? She didn't answer. She just shifted her chair slightly in opening. 30 seconds later, the double doors opened again. Daniel Whitmore returned. This time, it wasn't a walk. It was a statement, straight down the center aisle, not fast, not slow, but with that posture, the kind that doesn't request permission. He walked straight up to the tech holding the backup microphone. Didn't ask. The tech just handed it to him. Because sometimes you don't need authority to take the mic. You just need presence. The audience knew it too. They weren't cheering now. They were watching. Daniel faced Jimmy, then the audience. You can keep joking, Jimmy, he said, voice steady. But the moment you questioned her leadership, you made it personal. She earned her voice. You just act like you deserve yours. The words hung like fog in stage lights, not loud, just clear. Jimmy's face froze. His hand jerked slightly like he wanted to grab the mic back. But he didn't. Daniel gave the mic back to the tech, turned, walked out. Not a single extra word. The message was complete, and the silence that followed, it roared. By the time the show faded to commercial Twitter wasn't trending clips, it was reshaping narrative. Clips of Daniel's quiet walk, his one-line detonation, her earlier comeback, their posture, their calm. Daniel did that mic drop Marine, Chuck sit down Jimmy, Chuck's night truth, walks within minutes, Karoline's inbox flooded, veterans, students, journalists, mothers, teenagers who had never cared about politics. You didn't have to scream, you didn't humiliate him, you just told the truth, and it landed. Daniel didn't even check his phone. He was home, brewing coffee. Karoline, still in her robe, was scrolling through messages. You know, you kind of blew up the internet last night, she said. Daniel raised a brow. I didn't do anything but say the truth, she smirked. That's exactly why it worked. Across the country, in a much glossier home office, Jimmy Kimmel sat at a large desk, watching the clips, reading the comments. His name wasn't trending for jokes. It was trending for being shut down, with restraint, by someone the internet was now calling the real leader on stage. He scrolled through headlines. Marine Levels, late night host in 30 seconds, Karoline Leavitt's husband puts Kimmel on the defensive without raising his voice. Hollywood mockery meets dignified fury and loses. He slammed his laptop shut. That man is dangerous, he muttered. But he wasn't talking about Daniel's military background. He was talking about narrative. The kind that couldn't be spun. The kind that didn't need edits. The kind that made you look small, not because it was loud, but because it was right. His team scrambled. Interns clipping negative commentary, producers pitching Vanity Fair exclusives. Will frame it as humor gone wrong, someone said. Or miscommunication, another offered. No, Jimmy said low. We don't apologize. Silence in the room. But deep down he knew he was losing something. Not fame, not even respect. He was losing control. Back in D.C., Karoline was at the podium in the press room. Glossy lights, reporters leaning in. She didn't bring up the awards night. She didn't need to. But a CNN reporter asked anyway. Ms. Leavitt, any comment on last night's viral moment? She smiled. Soft, composed. I think what my husband said spoke louder than anything I could have added. Another beat. He wasn't defending me. He was defending respect. Boom. That single line hit 1 million views before noon. Fox News, CBS, NBC, they all called. They didn't want her alone. They wanted them both. Not because she'd owned the room, because they'd made it clear this wasn't about partisanship. It was about dignity. That night, before going live on national television, Karoline turned to Daniel in the green room. You sure about this? He exhaled, adjusted his collar. Not a spotlight guy. But if it helps shut down folks like Kimmel, count me in. They walked on together. Cameras flashing, Chirons ready, America leaning in. And for the first time in a long time, a couple wasn't fighting for attention. They were fighting for each other. The manila envelope was thick. No return address, no logo. Just delivered right to the press secretary's desk in the West Wing. Karoline turned it over once, twice. Daniel was seated across from her, sipping coffee, watching her fingers hesitate for the first time in 2 days. She finally peeled it open. The letterhead wasn't federal, it was private, legal, intentional. At the top, in embossed serif, notice of defamation concern, representing Mr. James Kimmel. Daniel didn't flinch. Karoline let out a breath, not stress, but strategy. So it was official. He was going there. The language inside was surgical. The comments made by Ms. Leavitt and Mr. Whitmore have caused reputational harm to Mr. Kimmel and his public brand. Failure to issue a public correction or apology within 72 hours may result in legal action. Karoline's eyes scanned faster toward the end. The last line landed with all the subtlety of a sledgehammer in a suit. We urge discretion before this escalated further. She folded the letter slowly. He's really going to try to sue you? Daniel asked. No, she said, smiling faintly. He thinks he can scare me. Her voice changed. Not louder, just deeper, sharper. The kind of shift a storm makes when it realizes the roof is made of paper. I want the black flash drive, she said. Daniel froze for a moment, then stood and walked to the corner file drawer. Bottom shelf, hidden under campaign binders and sealed memos. He handed it over. On its casing, written in silver Sharpie K19, do not open unless necessary. She inserted it into the laptop. Typed the 10-digit passcode without looking at the keys. Daniel leaned on the desk's edge. Your opening that he asked. If Jimmy wants a public war, she replied, I'll give him a public record. The folder opened like a door into memory. Inside screenshots, email threads, internal comms, a full timeline. The year 2019. The event, a high-profile veterans charity gala in Los Angeles. The problem Jimmy Kimmel had agreed to sponsor, even tape a segment for broadcast. He'd made promises, written confirmations, public hype. And then he ghosted the entire event, the day before. No call, no explanation, just silence. Karoline, then a junior congressional aide staffing the Veterans Committee, had witnessed the chaos firsthand. She documented everything. Not because she planned to use it, but because she understood two things. 1, patterns matter. 2, Hollywood never deletes its sins. It buries them under better PR. She copied the folder to a new drive, labeled it plainly Kimmel, 19, full record. That afternoon, she drafted a statement. Brief, blistering. We have received Jimmy Kimmel's legal threat. As someone who documents truth for a living, I am not intimidated by celebrity lawsuits, but I am very interested in releasing the full record regarding Mr. Kimmel's actions toward the veteran community in 2019. If he would like a public conversation, I'm happy to schedule one in court or on camera. Within an hour, it was live. And the internet didn't just respond. It detonated. Conservatives applauded. Moderates leaned in. Even liberal-leaning vets began quoting dates and names. I was there in 2019. Karoline's telling the truth. We had empty seats, broken promises. It was humiliating. Kimmel ghosted us for optics. She just brought the receipts. Back in Los Angeles, Jimmy Kimmel was fuming in a studio conference room, shirt sleeves rolled up, pacing like a man allergic to accountability. What the hell does she have? He barked. Silence from his team. She's bluffing. She's not a junior producer, muttered under his breath. Jimmy turned to his publicist. We need to get ahead of this. How she didn't accuse you of anything. She just reminded people what you forgot. He stared at the wall, jaw clenched. Back in D.C., Karoline had no plans to tweet again. Instead, she waited. For prime time. When it came, it wasn't an Instagram reel. It wasn't a passive-aggressive retweet. It was Fox News, studio, spotlight, a flash drive on the desk, a single sheet of paper beneath it. Tucker Green introduced her with the anticipation of a man who knew something volcanic was coming. Tonight, we welcome White House Press Secretary Karoline Leavitt not for political commentary, but to respond directly to a legal threat from late-night host Jimmy Kimmel. Karoline didn't smile. She didn't blink. She looked straight into the lens. I was threatened this week, not physically legally, by a man who mocked my husband's service and couldn't handle the public response. That man was Jimmy Kimmel. The studio fell silent, but I've learned something in this job. People who hide behind status rarely expect to be confronted with the truth. She pushed the flash drive forward slightly. This device contains documentation from 2019, email exchanges, booking confirmations, screenshots, all pointing to a pattern. Click. She slid the top page forward. In 2019, Mr. Kimmel agreed to sponsor and headline a veterans charity gala in Los Angeles. One day before the event, he withdrew without notice. No explanation. No apology. Over 100 service members and families were left in confusion and embarrassment. It was not a scheduling conflict. It was a choice. Tucker blinked. Even he hadn't been pre-briefed. Karoline turned back to the camera. You sued me, Mr. Kimmel, claiming I harmed your reputation. But what I hold here isn't commentary. It's your own words. If we're going to court, I'll bring this. But if you'd like to end this now, I'd recommend starting with a public apology, not to me. To the veterans you forgot. Mic still on, eyes still locked, and the internet, it didn't pause. It flooded. Hashtags flared again. Yar Karoline strikes back. Yarsh Kimmel 19. Yar Honor over Hollywood Reddit lit up with photo evidence from 2019. Rows of chairs, no Kimmel confused volunteers. One post went viral within minutes. My dad was in that audience. Waited 3 hours for Kimmel. We were told he was on his way. He never came. Karoline's not lying. Daniel was watching the clip from home. He leaned back. Quiet, proud. She's not just responding, he said. She's rewriting the script. The story should have burned out. That's what Jimmy Kimmel told himself. It was supposed to be another round of social media noise. A viral clip, some memes, maybe a trending hashtag or two. Then the world moves on. But it didn't, because Karoline didn't gloat, didn't tweet, didn't brag. And that silence, it kept the pressure cooking. The hashtags only got louder, more pointed, more specific. Kimmel 19 wasn't a slogan. It was a timestamp, and people were digging. One Reddit thread unearthed an internal memo from 2019. A staff assistant on Kimmel's team had warned backing out of this Veterans Gala could look bad, especially with the optics around the midterms. The reply, we're not aligned with rural right energy. Too red, too low return. That phrase stuck. Too red, too low return. By noon the next day, every conservative blog from Texas to Tampa had posted it. But the real detonation didn't come from the right, it came from Keanu Reeves, A single tweet, no hashtags, no emojis, just clean, restrained fire. I was invited to the 2019 Veterans Gala. I attended. Jimmy didn't. I saw the disappointment. Karoline Leavitt spoke the truth. Veterans deserve better. 5 million views in 2 hours. Jimmy stared at the screen. Keanu didn't comment on politics. Didn't weigh in on Hollywood fights, but this was personal. A-list power wasn't supposed to turn inward, and yet that's exactly what happened. Actors, producers, even former network execs began making quiet calls, sending DMs to press contacts, sharing anecdotes under condition of anonymity. I've seen Kimmel bail on military-linked orgs before. He cherry-picks appearances. If it doesn't elevate his base, he's out. She didn't attack. She brought proof. That's different. Meanwhile, Karoline stayed silent. No posts, no press junkets, no reaction gifts. When a reporter cornered her at a local school appearance and asked if she saw Keanu's tweet, she simply replied, "That took courage." I respect it deeply. The restraint was sharper than any comeback. Hollywood, long a machine of coordinated silence, now felt like it was holding its breath. Kimmel's team scrambled. Damage control briefings, spin sessions, message rehearsals. "We can reframe this," his publicist insisted. "Say it's been taken out of context." "No," Jimmy said. "We bury it, no statements, no responses. We don't fan the flames." But it was too late. Even late-night allies had started backpedaling. Stephen Colbert made a joke, then backtracked mid-monologue. I was going to say something about Karoline, but let's be honest, she didn't throw a punch. She brought a flash drive. Jimmy was used to being the guy with the punchline. Now he was the punchline, and he hated it. He called his lawyer again. "Tell me straight, does she have anything else she doesn't need more? She already positioned it. What the hell does that mean? She framed you as a man who uses influence to mock service and runs when called on it, and you responded with silence. It's a strategy. It's a weakness," the lawyer said. Across town in a rented loft lit by one desk lamp, Karoline was putting the flash drive away. Not as a trophy. As a file. Labeled, archived, dated. Daniel walked in carrying 2 mugs. "You think he'll come back from this?" he asked. She shrugged. "He'll survive, but not untouched." She sat at her desk, pulling up new drafts for a veterans policy announcement. Daniel leaned on the doorframe. "You really didn't expect Keanu Reeves, did you?" She laughed softly. "I was hoping for Clint Eastwood, but I'll take it." Then came the blog hits. Not from blue checks, not from CNN, but from shadow blogs with headlines like, "Is Karoline Leavitt really the patriot she pretends to be staff?" "Exodus from press office raises questions. Does her husband's uniform shield her from criticism?" Anonymous quotes. Vague implications. Nothing concrete, but suggestive enough to trend. Hashtag Leavitt Lies popped up, backed by small troll networks' burner accounts and algorithmic retweets. But this time Karoline was ready. She didn't tweet a denial. Didn't issue a statement. Instead, she uploaded a 2-minute video. It opened with a still frame of her standing with Daniel at a military hospital. Then clips of her hosting events for veterans' unpublicized community visits, hugging wounded soldiers, handwritten thank you notes from teens and military families. Overlay text in quiet white font. "Some people fight in the open. Others fight in shadows. I prefer receipts." Final frame, a quote from a retired general. "Karoline Leavitt shows more honor in her pinky than most people in a 30-year career." It hit 10 million views in 6 hours. No narration, no caption war, just proof. Even Keanu reposted it with 3 words, "This is integrity." Inside Jimmy Kimmel's team, panic had set in. His lawyer whispered, "She's building a legal fortress." His PR rep added, "She's not just fighting back, she's winning hearts." One intern said what no one else would. "You made her bigger." Jimmy watched the clip loop, hands clenched, mouth still. He had built his career on satire. But the joke was over, and now the only thing trending was Karoline Leavitt. The silence didn't end with a press release. It didn't end on camera. It ended with a letter hand-delivered to the West Wing and stamped with a case withdrawal. Jimmy Kimmel's legal team didn't offer an apology. They didn't issue a clarification. No bold-faced retractions. Just one quiet message filed behind the scenes. "We hereby withdraw the claim for reputational harm. No further legal action will be pursued." No interviews followed. No statements were made. And that silence didn't sound strong anymore. It sounded defeated. Karoline Leavitt read the email on her laptop at the kitchen counter. She didn't flinch. She didn't grin. Her fingers tapped once, twice, then let the tab close. Daniel stood across from her, pouring coffee into a chipped blue mug, the one from his last base overseas. "He's walking away," he asked. She nodded. That's what people do when they start something they weren't ready to finish. There was no celebration, no parade, because this wasn't a win for applause. It was a win for what didn't need to be shouted. Karoline didn't hold a press conference. She didn't go on the late-night circuit to gloat. Instead, she opened a blank document, wrote a headline at the top in bold, "Standing when others sit." Then she began to write, not to defend herself, but to define the truth for the people who had no microphones, no editors, no airtime. The letter ran the next morning in the Atlantic. No viral video embedded. No red circle thumbnail. Just a black and white column and the kind of clarity no spin doctor could touch. I didn't speak because I needed to defend myself. I spoke because silence, when mocked, becomes permission. I didn't respond because I needed attention. I responded because the man I love, like thousands in this country, has served quietly and been laughed at loudly. That ends now. This was never about fame. This is about the cost of dignity and the weight of restraint. I'm not here to trend. I'm here to stand. By mid-afternoon, the letter had been posted in every veterans forum. It was pinned to the doors of university journalism schools. Civics teachers printed it for their students. Military families emailed it with subject lines like, "Finally, someone said it." Daniel didn't speak to the media once, didn't tweet, didn't even open the full article when it hit #1 on Medium. He read it later that night quietly at the table while Karoline washed out her coffee cup. When he was done, he folded the page and said, "You didn't win because of what you said. You won because you didn't flinch." Karoline paused. "You didn't either," she said. They didn't high-five. They didn't hug for the camera. They just existed in the space between public noise and personal knowing. And that space, more than any hashtag, was sacred. But the story wasn't done. There was still the Veterans Honor Summit in Virginia, the kind of event where speeches get recorded but not broadcast, where the audience isn't filtered through followers or shares, just through lived experience. Karoline stood on a wooden stage with no teleprompter, no makeup crew, no lens flares. Just her blazer, her cross, and a quiet wind tugging at the edge of the American flag behind her. She looked out at rows of veterans, Gold Star families, retired officers. No one cared about lighting. No one cared about trending. "I was mocked," she began. "Not just for my voice, but for who I married. For what I believed. For what I refused to laugh at." The silence was thick. Not awkward, just waiting. And when I stood up, it wasn't to fight for attention. It was to remind people that you don't need a stage to command respect. You just need to keep standing even when the spotlight tries to blind you. Someone clapped, another rose, then 24 veterans stood not for applause, but for acknowledgement. This was never about Jimmy Kimmel, she said. It was about every woman who's been told she's too patriotic, every man whose service is dismissed as a photo op, every family who waits quietly while the country forgets what sacrifice actually looks like. She looked down at her hands, then back up. "I didn't win this with a microphone. I won it by remembering why we speak in the first place." No music played, no lights dimmed, but the room rose to its feet, row by row, slowly, not to celebrate, but to say, "We see you, we heard you, and we remember." Afterward, someone passed her a note, no name, just handwriting. Courage isn't always bullets or battlefields. Sometimes it's standing still with truth when the spotlight tries to blind you. Keanu Reeves. She smiled. Not wide, not performative, just enough to hold. On the drive back, Daniel turned to her. "I thought you were going to cry during that last part," he said. "I almost did," she replied. He glanced at her. "But if I had, you know what would have happened." He laughed. "What you'd have walked on stage again." He didn't deny it, but she didn't need him to. Because now everyone knew what power actually looked like. It looked like standing still. It looked like letting the other side swing first. It looked like one man defending not ego, but principle. It looked like one woman in heels and steel walking straight into a storm and not blinking. And most of all, It looked like truth held without noise. In a world built on microphones and makeup, Karoline Leavitt had rewritten the rules of confrontation. Not with heat, with presence. She didn't just win a public fight. She reminded the country that power doesn't have to shout. Sometimes it just has to outlast the punchline. The next morning, she placed the flash drive back in the drawer. Not as a trophy, as a record. And then she moved on. Because when the world tries to reduce dignity to a joke, the best response isn't rage. It's reverence. The kind of reverence you earn not with a louder mic, but with a quieter truth.